There we go. Hello, Katya.
Hello, how's it going?
Welcome. Yeah, I'm good, thanks. We're doing it online, look, rather than face to face. Never mind.
I know. We've got very similar bookshelves, though. It almost looks like we're next to each other.
It does almost look like we're next to each other. You have a much more civilized bookshelf than me, though. I've just got like really weird, geeky gaming novels, and just try and block out all the books, try and block out all the games. We've got quite a bit to chat through this week, haven't we?
Yeah, another big week for the cannabis industry. Quite like a
Mm.
varied amount of stuff that's gone on in the last few weeks, or last
Yeah,
few days, to be honest.
last few days. Yeah, yeah. We're going to talk about the first Wednesday's report, the cannabis and me study, the the MedBud British cannabis drama. Ooh,
Yes.
I'm going to tread carefully there. Some general like drug policy news that came out, and just look at a couple of articles, a couple of non-canna press cannabis coverage, aren't we,
Yep.
this week?
Yeah.
Should we get straight into it? We're just gonna go. Last week we kind of split it in two. This week we're just gonna go in, talk about the subject and what it means for the industry, all in one. We're gonna try that format this week. Do you want to kick things off with the first Wednesday's report, which came out this very day?
Yeah, this morning. Yeah, lots of noise on social media. Yeah, I'll kick off and interested to hear what your kind of thoughts and takeaways are as well. I think it's an amazing report. I mean, yeah, big round of applause to the first Wednesdays lot. Again, it's just like this beautiful beautiful piece of research, carefully
Strong design.
crafted and designed up and very user friendly as always. But in terms of the contents, I think it's super sensible, offers a very nuanced and balanced depiction of what the social impact of cannabis reform and legalization looks like. And I think it's a really important piece for the industry. I think to date there's obviously been a lot of work around social equity. It's a bit of a buzzword that's thrown around in the industry. Not always, social equity programs aren't always as equitable as they should be, or it's not even considered. Um, and I think to date, there's been a lot of kind of angry finger pointing, like there is in drug policy just generally, around, what needs to happen to repair the wrongs of prohibition. And whilst this is like totally true and valid, I think it's felt very kind of one sided in that kind of like angry, yeah, like left wing approach. Whereas I think this is a really nicely crafted piece of work that carefully talks about all those issues of equity and social justice, but in a very like kind, considered, neutral way, which is digestible for both advocates and the industry. Like because First Wednesdays is essentially a industry publishing arm for the cannabis industry. So I think it's just a really nice fusion of both and considering both, which is something that we like at Volteface. So yeah, I
100%.
thought the takeaways were all great around why we need to go beyond just legalizing, and there's all these other factors we need to consider to really tackle stigma and perception of cannabis use in society. Um,
There's one thing me and you have talked about a lot, haven't we? We've talked a lot about we don't we really don't like just sort of knee jerk policies that are just doing things because they feel like they should be doing them. We want things to be like really well considered and
mm,
planned, less of this like policy just to please, and rather that, not that, but rather policy that's effective. And I think social equity programs, there's a lot of things we've seen in North America which just feel like they're kind of glossy. Yeah, yeah, fine. Yeah, we've got some social equity in there. And it's not really well considered or effective. And I think there's loads to learn, isn't there? That this report talks about from North America and what it can look like here in
Yeah, and,
Europe.
and what it and the fact that we need to think about this for Europe as well, because one of the main takeaways, I guess, because this report was crafted off the back of their recreational Europe one, which found that Europe wasn't really considering social equity or the impact of race or ethnicity on anything. And most European countries don't even collect data or aggregate data by race and ethnicity, which is wild because it's like then we just don't even know whether how much of a disproportionate problem we have. And yeah, there's definitely things that we need to learn from North America and like things that don't translate to Europe. Like there's definitely policies that Europeans would be like, well, no, we don't want to implement that. But I think in terms of like equity and justice, there's a lot to learn. And things that like we need to get right to see the legal industry flourish. Because if the risk of getting this wrong is that, people just turn back to the illicit market and cannabis legalization fails. So yeah, there's a lot of considerations that are important. But
Yeah, definitely.
yeah.
We for a number of years now, haven't we, have said that the main debate and discussion needs to move to what does regulation look like rather than should we regulate. Like those arguments are just so kind of done and tired, and we're
Mm.
seeing global reform take place. And even though the UK might feel much further behind than other countries with regard to adult use, we're still on that. We're still on that path. We're still on that natural progression as with a lot of other countries. But these are the issues that now we really need to get into the detail of and have a discussion of. I think it's interesting that you talk about that like tension point that exists between advocacy and industry and people being angry and frustrated, which is understandable. I don't think either of us are saying that it's not okay to be angry and annoyed. People should be able to express themselves if you're passionate and care about an issue. Like it's understandable that people have different ways of expressing that. But and particularly with this issue, there are a lot of things that need to be discussed and sorted out, so you can understand why anger and frustration are in the mix completely. But I guess what we're saying is to get progress, there has to be like sensible, positive engagement with the industry. Like, there's no point just being annoyed at the industry and frustrated at the industry and kind of winding them up or try to create tension. It's much better
Yeah.
to try and get around the table with them and say, okay, look, there are some real issues here. What could this look like? But crucially, the what it could look like bit being based upon like an evidence-based approach and policy to social equity,
Yeah.
rather than just, oh yeah, we'll just give you some loans.
Rather than like
And
a virtue signally one.
yeah, just
Uh,
yeah, because I think a lot of the North American stuff has been in that vein, hasn't it? We'll just kind of give you loans that you're completely accountable for, and there's no kind of training or education or help as to how you can manage these business. But kind of off you go, just kind of box ticking
yeah.
exercise, which is a huge problem.
Yeah. No, but it's a great report, and I think it's going to be an amazing resource just for the industry in the years to come. So yeah, big round of applause and
Yeah, good job.
congratulations.
Nice,
Yeah, we're
nice report, nice design.
happy to support it.
Yeah, definitely. On that vein, there was another story that you'd come across which kind of fits alongside that, doesn't it? In the Guardian from
Yeah,
September.
I feel like it's of the same kind of nature. So, yeah, link to this. Those watching might be aware of the Cannabis in Me study, which is a King's College research project headed up by Marta DeForti, and it's looking at the impacts of cannabis use using genetic data, basically like the largest study to do so, looking at biological, genetic impacts, environmental factors around what people experience when they use cannabis, and it's really trying to pinpoint and understand where there are risk factors for developing psychosis, why some people don't end up developing psychosis even though they consume cannabis. And yeah, just want to understand and educate people on the effects of cannabis, and then help clinicians be more informed around who to prescribe the drug to and who not to. So yeah, I mean, it's a really important study, I think, for shaping our understanding around policy change and legalization, and how what sort of effects this will have. And I believe the study's been trying to recruit like 6,000 people. Like, it's a massive sample. And yeah, this article in the Guardian talks about the problems they've been encountering around recruiting Black and Asian populations, so minority groups. And yeah, it's been really, really difficult. I think in the article it mentions that these groups have been kind of suspicious around how the data's been used, how the data will be used, which is understandable when it comes to like disproportionality and getting the police involved. But yeah, I mean, there's definitely like a theme generally around underrepresentation of these groups in medical research, and that needs to change because we can't just have this be like a white centered thing that we generalize to all populations. And with the First Wednesdays report, like, there's clearly a difference in how in the experiences based on your ethnicity and race. And yeah, I guess the main shame is that advocacy groups haven't been willing to push this study out amongst their networks and communities. And I think that's a real shame, is that this kind of perpetuates this limited data that we have. And for, just like we were talking about with evidence-based policy, to shape these policies for the future, we need to understand the kind of risks and findings specific to particular populations. So yeah, I don't know if you any other thoughts on.
No, I just echo your thoughts. I think it's a good story to lead off the back of the Hanway work the first
Yeah,
Wednesdays
and I
before.
think just a good reminder in general, because I know that the Cannabis and Me study got, some some negative commentary from like the industry and like patient groups, especially with this kind of whole cannabis and psychosis. I feel like the forever argument amongst like patients and prohibitionists. But I think Marta de Fortes made some really good points around the fact that like it's evidence based, and there's so many things that we don't know about cannabis, and we need to conduct studies like this to understand like the pros and the cons.
Yeah, definitely.
So yeah, I hope they manage to find some
I
more.
hope so. Yeah, it'd be,
If you're watching this,
yeah,
sign up to participate.
yeah. We'll put it in the comments.
But yeah,
Yeah, it's,
next up, Paul, do you want to chat about the MedBud Wiki
ah,
British cannabis drama?
no, never will.
Just piling that one off to you.
I'll take this one. Um, Definitely want to approach this subject with caution because there are definitely, from what we can tell on Twitter or X, as we're meant to call it, there are definitely some legal claims and issues at play that I think is really important for us to tread carefully through. And I wouldn't want to contribute to a debate without having all the facts. So I want to give a disclaimer at the beginning that this is information or like a perspective based upon Twitter and some random Google searching and looking at an app. This might not be a fully formed position. And I guess the conclusions we'll come to will be quite broad. However, I think me and you do care
A good
about like,
disclaimer.
yeah, that's the disclaimer done. Now let's get straight into it. I think me and you care about transparency and honesty, and we certainly are a group that feel like it's our role to be very open and honest with the industry about our perspectives and feelings. And we certainly have one foot in an advocacy world and one foot in an industry world. So I do feel like it is certainly within our role to look at this and have an honest commentary around the
Mm.
situation and what's going on. There is clearly, I'll put it up on the screen, but there is clearly tension between MedBud Wiki, which I think for us is a really important resource that is used by a huge number of people.
Yeah,
It provides an incredible service to people that want to go on and learn about what's available, where they can get it from, and to their absolute they've been very open and I guess fair in that approach. They've not favoured one clinic. They're not
yeah,
sponsored
a
by any
very like
clinic.
democratic approach.
Really democratic, just really open, really transparent. If you want to submit information, put it on there. Like it's just a very good. I'm trying to think of the right word, but from an advocacy perspective, we think it's an excellent resource. Very open, very transparent, and doesn't favour anybody. She's excellent. Now, there's clearly tension between MedBud Wiki and British Cannabis, who have created an app and also another social media account. I don't know if it's another business entity called Can Doctor, which is, and I've downloaded the app again. I'll put some screenshots up on the screen, which is certainly doing a similar thing to MedBud Wiki in that it's providing a database by which people can go on and get information about product availability, clinics that exist, and kind of start that process of, you know, either getting a prescription or at least learning about what types of medicines are available.
Hmm.
Now, there is a claim from MedBud Wiki online that the data that is used on the MedBud Wiki site is being used by the app. I don't know if that's, they're just copying they've got like an API key or whatever that's just transferring the data over to the app. There's a claim by MedBud Wiki that the pictures that are being used on the Can Doctor app are pictures that patients have submitted themselves to MedBud Wiki with their own consent. And, GDPR is saying, yes, you can use those pictures and that information, and that is then appearing on the app. Now, we don't want to get too deep into he said, she said, they wrote this, they wrote the other. But I guess our like general observation when we've chatted about it off air is this isn't a good situation for the industry to be in or anyone. MedBud Wiki is a really well-known resource that lots of people in the industry follow and engage with. Many, many, many patients go on there. And British Cannabis is also a big company. British Cannabis is a big, serious player in the industry. And for there to be kind of like open tension between the two groups is not a good look for anyone. And that's not to say that we don't think that these conversations are important and that it is, that social media is actually a good place to challenge someone if you feel like you're not getting what you want
Hmm.
away from that privately. But it's not a good look. And I guess it sort of, again, there's this ongoing kind of picks up some themes from the First Wednesdays report, in that there is always going to be tension between the advocacy groups, because MedBud Wiki, as far as I'm aware, don't get any money from this. There's no sponsorship. They're doing it for free
Yeah.
in essence. There's no commercial element to that, and the tension is always going to exist. I've always felt this about MedBud Wiki. It is such a good resource and such a good idea, and we've seen this model replicated in North
People,
America
for
and
people
across
who
Europe.
want to steal it and
Someone's
make
going to want
money
to
off it.
commercialize it.
Yeah.
Someone's going to want to commercialize it. Like, there is, we all know that there's money to be made in the world of data collation, and also, SEO for website. Like, we know that MedBud Wiki is, although it's not a commercial entity, the information that's there, and there is a commercial element to it, and a commercial interest. And I think if it's not, British Cannabis through Can Doctor, it would be someone else. There is always going to be someone who is
Mm.
like, that's a great idea. We should do that. We want to go for this. Now, Can Doctor have kind of said in their comms that they have actually reached out to MedBud Wiki. They've tried to start a conversation to kind of collaborate on this, but that doesn't necessarily mean that MedBud Wiki have to go along with that and say, yeah, okay, let's instantly collaborate. They've clearly got their own position and own decision, and have chosen to not commercialize that or partner with any industry group. But it doesn't it's a big concern for me that this kind of tension is existing at an early stage in the industry. We're
Mhm.
still at a point by which there aren't hundreds of thousands of patients. It's not this huge industry that we've seen in other areas of Europe. It's definitely on the path, like a path of growth. But it really worries me that this kind of tension is playing out on social media, and I worry that it's going to create even more tension between patient groups and advocacy and the industry. And I guess we don't know all the facts, but it doesn't look good. It doesn't look. It's not a good look. It's not a good
Yeah,
look.
I
And the
feel like it's
commercialization. No,
yeah,
go on,
it's
mate. Go
just
on.
not a good look for like either party. And I mean, this isn't like I guess this isn't unique to this particular drama or situation that's unfolding. We've seen it with other groups, and this kind of behavior has been going on for a while in the industry. And I think there's definitely like discussions to be had publicly on social media, and then there's discussions that need to just happen behind closed doors. Because yeah, I think from like an outsider perspective, and I'm not talking like us outsiders, but like someone outside of the cannabis industry seeing this, definitely like would raise some alarm bells, you
For
know?
sure. But I think in MedBud Wiki's kind of defense as such, or not even their defense, but just with my advocacy hat on, it makes me really uncomfortable. People profiting from advocacy and information makes me really that gives me an uncomfortable feeling about cannabis. And I think, we've just been talking about the social justice report from First Wednesdays and about social equity. I think the industry should look to try and commercialize in ways that don't involve using information that is or should be completely available to all. And I guess specifically that is an element of the Can Doctor app, in which on the app, it'll have the medications that are available, and then directly underneath that, they're selling CBD products that are just their CBD products.
Mm.
That, I don't know anything about the legality of that, but there's an element of that makes me feel a bit uncomfortable. That it's like, oh, use this app to come get information about products that are available. Also, look, our CBD is being sold underneath. That versus just a website which is like, here's all the information and it's impartial and it's not biased and it's just factual. That makes me feel much more comfortable. So I'm glad MedBud Wiki exists. I hope it continues to exist, and I hope it continues to kind of provide that role in the community. And I certainly, there is a feeling of discomfort when those two things start getting blurred, when it's like, here's a way of just finding information and keeping it up to date, but also like, we're only selling certain commercial
Mm.
products. I also think, and again, this isn't legal advice in any way, shape, or form, I'm not a lawyer, but I'm very aware that there are tensions around even giving people product information about unlicensed medicines. So I think MedBud Wiki are aware that and I think they've got an ongoing conversation there with certain groups around the legality of what they post online. So I think not only does it make me uncomfortable that there's this tension between advocacy and industry, and the kind of commercialization of information which is freely available makes me uncomfortable, but it's just generally not a good look for the industry in its early days to be having issues with the MHRA. And like, we know the sensitivity around marketing and unlicensed medicines, and the kind of pressure that's on, not so much pressure, but restrictions that are on clinics with regards to their marketing. It would be a shame if this opens up another can of worms with MHRA and causes the industry more tension and problems. So hopefully there's some kind of resolution. Hopefully it's something that is resolved outside of the public eye and could just be addressed, and then
Yeah.
there isn't that ongoing tension. I guess from our perspective, our view is that like just industry and advocacy just need to collaborate and find ways of working together, and
Mm.
sometimes that means
And if
that
there is
it's not
tension,
about
like, take it
profit.
offline. Yeah, and if there is
Yeah,
tension.
yeah. Yeah, definitely. But also on the other end for MedBud Wiki, it's an incredible resource that people really like, but also it could be commercialized. And it has been in North America. Like, look at Leaflet. Like, yeah, how much did that website get sold for? It's unbelievably profitable having an information database, particularly if you've got your eye on further European reform and one day adult use
Mm.
market.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely, but I think we'll all be watching it with a keen eye.
Yeah, and it's not just that, is it? There's also like other. I mean, again, we don't want to get into details of this. I don't want to start. some kind of like Twitter thing. We're drama free out with Katya. We're not drama people.
Yeah, no,
We
we're just
switch off when there's
we're
too much
just
drama. We just go.
observers.
We just turn Twitter off if there's too much drama. We go away. But it's not. There are other like tensions that are playing out on Twitter at the moment between like different groups, and it's just not. The industry's so small. It's just not a good look. It would be great if people could resolve these things
Yeah.
offline.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I guess on that note, just further UK drug policy reform, Paul, or just like the lack thereof.
Yeah.
I know Keir Starmer came out stating the obvious that Britain's Labour Party will not be pursuing any kind of drugs reform in if they get elected.
Very frustrating. It's a bit like I was thinking about the other day. Just for drug policy, one of the impacts of a two-party system is that when the other party are just scoring own goals, the past like 3 or 4 Tory party conferences have just been like absolute chaos, haven't they?
Mm.
They've just been like massive fallout, bad PR. Like there's every day there's been like another. Oh my god, what is going on? Who said this? Why are they doing that? I think for Labour, when the Tory party continue to just implode like that, why would you take any risks on any area of policy? Why would you do it? It would be such a foolish decision if your focus was let's win as many seats as possible, which obviously is exactly what's going on. And it's just because of that two-party system. Labour aren't bothered about they're not bothered about Lib Dems, not bothered about SNP. It's solely focused on them versus
Yeah.
the Tories. And it creates this kind of like this stagnation when it comes to drug policy because they become unwilling to step into a progressive place.
Yeah, or
The thing that's
any like slightly controversial progressive policy, like Labour's basically just trying to act as Tory as possible.
Yeah, definitely. They just want to win votes. They don't want to do anything stupid. But the thing that's disappointing about it is I actually think that is what Stammer thinks as well. I don't think that
Mm.
he's a progressive. I don't think he's progressive at all when it comes to drug reform. He has spent many, many years prosecuting, uh, you know, a wide range of people in which drugs will have been involved.
Mm.
And lawyers sometimes come out of that a different way and come out and go, I've done nothing but arrest people for years. Prosecute people for years. I see how ridiculous this is. I now support more drug reform. Sometimes people come out of it that way. And sometimes people just double down and go the
Mm.
other. And they're like, drugs are a scourge on society, become really anti-drug reform. And I think, unfortunately, Keir's
Huge.
Starmer's gone down that route. I just genuinely think he's not progressive on the issue. And it's likely that we'll get a Labour government in the next election, likely, although I think
Who
I'm
knows?
always hesitant around strong predictions in the current political climate. Things change quick, and a lot of, election after election, year after year around the globe, commentators have proven to be out of line from the public. But I think most people feel that we'll likely get a Labour government. I guess our hope is that within that, because there are a lot of people in Labour, a lot of politicians we know that are very supportive of the issue, that are in good places. Whether they come forward and challenge Keir a little bit more once they've won an election, I hope so. But it's not amazingly it's not amazingly progressive, is it, for the left leaning party for them to be like, it's a no on drug reform? Like, oh, okay, see where we get to. And
Yeah.
then you
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see how things unfold.
yeah, fingers crossed. Well, their conference is coming up, isn't it? So hopefully there'll be some positive
Snippet.
statements come out of that with regards to drugs. You never know. And then you picked up some other press stories as well, haven't you, that come up? Do you wanna chat through those?
Yeah, I feel like not loads to say about this, but I saw on my Google alerts that the pharmaceutical journal published an article last couple of days on medical cannabis and like where we're at 5 years on from legislation in the UK specifically. And I thought it was quite an informative read, especially for like scientists and medical professionals around cannabis. And I can't help but think it might be some kind of ancillary press from the BBC documentary from a few weeks ago, and which we were talking about on our last show. From all the press that Hannah Deacon did, and yeah, just quite a comprehensive piece on cannabis prescribing in the UK. And it's an academic publication. It's a different sort of audience than the regular run-of-the-mill cannabis press. So it's quite nice to see that there's like a bit of an additional wave of cannabis press off the back of the documentary. And yeah, I can't help but think it's like a renewed bit of interest in mainstream and other kind of ancillary media. So
I think it's a really good observation, isn't it? That sometimes because of what happened in 2018, and often with policy, you kind of like expect policy to only change when there's like a big thing. Big thing happens, policy changes. Big thing happens, policy changes. Which,
mm,
if you would speak to someone like Chris Snowden, who's literally doing like a PhD on this, would suggest that politicians do create policy change often in response to public outcry or pressure or like a fear of being seen as nasty or soft or whatever, like the NOS ban. Like the lots and lots of pressure, and then they're like, we can't be soft, we've got to clamp down.
yeah,
But I think even if like the documentary that came out a few weeks ago, that obviously didn't lead to the government suddenly rushing to the table and making a statement. But even though you don't see it, it does move things forward. More people become aware of medical cannabis. More people start writing about medical cannabis. It has this like, it does move us in the right direction. I think that's good.
yeah.
It's good to see other stuff out there outside the mainstream press.
Yeah, and I guess as well, like the fact that the documentary's on iPlayer and it's just like an asset and a thing that's there for the next year or whatever means that even if people didn't watch the BBC Breakfast Show and all the different clips of media, it's just like something that's there and people are just going through iPlayer in the evening and they're like, oh, this looks interesting. Let me click this, and then that informs them, and then someone tells their friends, and so it's this kind of like slow wave of movement, kind of like with any of the reports that we've published where like DM for details and known unknowns.
Yeah,
Even now people email us being like, oh, this was really informative, and like, can I get a quote from you on this? So yeah, it's like definitely like a slow burner.
yeah, definitely. That's a good observation around those two reports as well. Because some reports we've done, like just you get big media coverage right off the bat, and then you don't really hear anything about it again. No one really speaks about it. But
Mm,
the info details and known unknowns like real slow burners. I mean,
mm,
like you just persistently get people speaking to us or reading it or come across it, like and also leads to really good initiatives in the background.
yeah,
Both those reports been a good example.
yeah. And then another press story
Yeah, I
just
yeah
leaked.
I picked one out from Byline Times, who we love, Hardeep Matharu, the editor there. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful journalist and human being, good friend of mine, who used to work at Volteface. Go Hardeep. So they had a submission which is about medical cannabis, about a chronic pain sufferer's experience of being locked out of medical cannabis and kind of making financial points around this. It's still quite unaffordable. I think they called it like a rich man's drug, sort of like a rich man's system. I mean, a rich boy's toy. I wouldn't. I mean, it's good. First of all, it's great to see Byline covering medical cannabis, and it's good, and that's that person's experience, which obviously is really valid, and it is for us frustrating that people would benefit so greatly from medical cannabis and are using it. I do think it's becoming more accessible though, with regards to the price and availability. Like it's still not. I wouldn't describe medical cannabis on prescription as a cheap endeavor. I wouldn't be like, well, it's really cheap now. I don't think it's cheap. It's still, particularly if you're a daily user of medical cannabis, it's still expensive.
Yeah,
But I would encourage anybody who has that perception of it's too expensive to just go and see what it looks like at the moment. Go and see what some of the schemes are that you can sign up to. And I think medicine is becoming more affordable. But any story like that just brings to people's attention that medical cannabis is available on prescription, I think is great. And Byline don't do loads of writing on drug stores, drug policy, and medical cannabis. So it's good that one of their reporters that they have in house. I think it was the chief report. Yeah, their chief reporter. Was willing and happy to share their story and their journey. So I think that's good. The more and the timing of this, I think, would also suggest that it was off
It's
the back of
yeah,
the work Hannah had done with the BBC and the documentary that came out. So this is probably another piece of evidence that says, like, once you get those big stories, it does have this little knock-on effect. More people pick it up. You know, there'll have been countless like local radio phone-ins and stuff that have taken place that we just never know about. So just really
yeah,
random towns and all around the country. So it's another good sign that those bigger pieces of work do have knock-on effects and
yeah. It's a
an
nice
interesting piece.
reminder and
Yeah,
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 motivation to keep fighting.
yeah, definitely agree. Quite a lot to going through quite a lot there. I mean, there's
Yeah,
kind of I think there's definitely some tension points that we'll keep an eye on over the coming weeks, won't we? And I think the MedBud story we'll probably revisit because I don't think that's going to be the end of that. That will, I imagine, carry on and keep going. But yeah, we just
yeah. We'll
really
see what the update is in 2 weeks when we do this again.
yeah we'll be back in 2 weeks. In the meantime, that tension that exists between industry and advocacy is an important one to discuss and explore, and certainly one that we care a lot about trying to soften and create more collaboration. It's one that we care about deeply, isn't it? Because we definitely have our
Yeah,
feet
and
in
both
both camps.
worlds. Um, yeah, but yeah, we'll be back in 2 weeks' time with some more stories and
Yeah,
drama and updates. Whatever the industry throws at
whatever's
us,
out there.
we'll discuss.
Yeah, we'll chat it through. Ace, thanks for joining me, my friend. Good to see you, and thanks for people for watching. We'll catch you next time.